My rich boyfriend thought he was an alpha, but without me he couldn't even pay rent. His elite men's club just watched as Facebook destroyed him, and now he's living with his mom. I don't even know where to start. Maybe I just need to vent. I'm not looking for advice. I just want to know if anyone else has been through this. I'm 30. My boyfriend is 34. We've been together for 2 years, and 6 months ago we moved in together. First, everything seemed fine. We had an understanding. We'd split the bills and chores 50-50ths until we decided to have kids. If that ever happened, we agreed he'd take on more of the financial and domestic load because I'd be the one risking my body, my career, my health. That seemed fair. That seemed like partnership. And then, 2 months ago, he got a tiny promotion. Just a slight bump in pay. No major responsibilities added, no drastic lifestyle change. Just a little more money. We adjusted our bill split accordingly, and I didn't think twice about it. But something in him shifted. Started small. So small I almost didn't notice. He'd forget to do the dishes when it was his turn. He'd leave the laundry sitting in the hamper even though we'd always split that task. Then, gradually, it became more blatant. He'd sit on the couch all weekend, watching me do my half of the chores, while his half piled up in the corners of the apartment, rotting. When I called him out, he blamed it on stress. Said work was getting to him, that he just needed to relax on weekends. But we both work corporate desk jobs. It's not like he's out there breaking his back on a construction site. If I could pull my weight, why couldn't he? The breaking point came when I found mold growing in a pot he was supposed to clean. He had just put the lid on and left it there. Out of sight, out of mind. I nearly gagged. How long had he been ignoring it? How long had he been waiting for me to cave and clean up after him? I had to take a day off work just to catch up on the cleaning he neglected. An entire day. And the final straw? Groceries. It was his week to do them. Usually, if one of us was too tired, we'd at least have the decency to let the other know so we could order food. But he didn't. He just came home, empty-handed, and sat down like nothing was wrong. Like it wasn't even worth mentioning. I confronted him, told him that if he wasn't willing to pull his weight anymore, we needed to hire a cleaner and split that cost too. No, he said. I don't want a stranger in our flat. Fine. Then we'd need to start ordering grocery deliveries, since he clearly couldn't be bothered to do it himself. His response? He called me frivolous with money. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to keep my voice steady. Fine. If he wanted a traditional setup where one person handled most of the housework while the other focused on work, I could do that. But it wouldn't come for free. I'll take over the chores, I said. But I'll need to cut down my working days from 5 to 4. That means a direct loss in income. If you expect me to prioritize housework over my career, then you'll need to compensate me for that sacrifice. You'll cover the difference in rent, and I'll charge you an hourly rate for the cleaning at the market average for a housekeeper. I watched him carefully. He had been so smug before, so confident, so ready to shoot down my suggestions. But now, his expression froze. His lips slightly parted, his brows furrowed, his hands twitching like he wanted to gesture but didn't know how. He didn't expect this. For the first time in weeks, he had nothing to say. It was like watching a malfunction in real time. This was a man who always had an argument, always had some bullshit excuse. But now, silence. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't about fairness. It was never about fairness. It wasn't that he couldn't afford a cleaner. It wasn't that chores were overwhelming him. He just didn't want to do them. He wanted to see how far he could push me, how much I would take, how long it would take for me to fold and accept my place. The realization burned through me like acid. If you love me, why are you trying to manipulate me into a situation that benefits only you? My voice was calm, but I could feel my pulse hammering in my neck, my fingers curling into fists. Still, he said nothing. Then something clicked in my brain. I knew his friends. I had seen how they talked about women, like accessories, like inconveniences who needed to be trained. These were guys who struggled to keep relationships because they wanted girlfriends who acted like 1950s housewives but looked like Instagram models. Did your friends put you up to this? I asked, my tone sharp. Did they tell you to start testing me? To see if I'd be a proper woman? His expression shifted. Guilt. That was all the confirmation I needed. And then, as if the words had been waiting to escape, he said it. A proper woman would be happy to look after the house. I actually felt my stomach drop, like a physical sensation of something snapping inside me. And then he went further. You're just being difficult. I don't know why you're so obsessed with money. You sound like a gold digger. Silence. Thick, suffocating, deafening silence. I blinked at him, the words hitting me like a slap. A gold digger? A gold digger? Was this a joke? I wasn't asking for diamonds. I wasn't asking for vacations in Paris or a brand new car. I was asking to be compensated for unpaid labor that he was deliberately dumping on me. For the first time in my life, I felt something cold settle in my chest. A sharp, electric kind of rage. Oh, I breathed, nodding slowly. So that's how it is? He said nothing. You're right, I continued, voice shaking with fury. I am a gold digger. I'm digging for the absolute bare minimum, and I still can't find it. He scoffed, rolling his eyes, but I wasn't finished. You know what that makes you? I leaned in slightly, staring straight into his face. A gold digger too, except you're digging for a free housekeeper and a personal chef. You want a woman to cook, clean, and take care of everything for you, for free. His jaw tightened. I had him now. So don't talk to me about money, I snapped. Because if you were really proud of your promotion, if you actually had your shit together, you'd be hiring a cleaner and paying for a chef instead of manipulating the woman you supposedly love into doing it all for free. And not really for free, actually. Because if I take a day off to clean up after your useless ass, I'm technically paying to be your maid. He stared at me, stunned. His mouth opened and closed like he wanted to say something. But what could he say? I had already seen the truth. And I wasn't unseeing it. I had wasted 2 years on this man. 2 years thinking we were partners. 2 years believing we were equals. And now, here I was, watching him unravel because he had gotten a tiny taste of power and couldn't resist trying to use it against me. A gold digger. The words rang in my head, over and over, like a bad joke. I had never felt so humiliated, or so done. And I hadn't even packed my bags yet. I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time I didn't see the man I had loved. I saw dead weight. I had spent 2 years thinking we were building something together, that we were equals. But he wasn't lifting me up. He was dragging me down, inch by inch, turning me into something smaller, weaker, more exhausted. And worse, I had let him, and I hated that. I hated the sting of betrayal, but more than that, I hated my own blindness. So I did the only thing left to do. I turned my back on him and started packing. The moment I reached for my suitcase, I felt it, a shift in the air, the realization creeping onto his face. Are you serious? His voice was flat, almost amused, like he thought I was bluffing, like I was just throwing a tantrum and would get over it. I ignored him. I yanked open drawers, stuffing my things into bags with sharp, angry movements. Every folded shirt felt like an accusation. Every pair of shoes reminded me how many times I had walked past his growing mess, waiting for him to step up. He didn't try to stop me. He just sat there, arms crossed, watching, like he was waiting, like he thought I would see sense and come crawling back. You're overreacting, he finally muttered. You'll regret this. I paused, gripping the edge of my suitcase so hard my fingers ached. Regret, regret. I turned to face him, my chest rising and falling with shallow, uneven breaths. The worst part was he wasn't even angry. He was just smug. He really thought he had won. I laughed. I actually laughed. A sharp, humorless sound that felt like breaking glass in my throat. You really think I'll regret leaving a man who can't even wash a fucking dish? I shook my head, my own voice quivering with fury. You're pathetic. That got to him. His jaw tightened, his fingers curling into fists, but he didn't say a word. And I realized something else in that moment. He wasn't ignoring me out of guilt. He was ignoring me because he didn't think I had the guts to actually leave. So I did. I threw the last of my things into the suitcase, zipped it shut, and dragged it to the door. And as I stood there, looking back at him one last time, all I felt was embarrassment. Embarrassment that I wasted 2 years. Embarrassment that I didn't see this side of him sooner. Embarrassment that I had fought for this relationship while he was sitting there, waiting for me to see sense and accept less than what I deserved. You don't need to contact me, I said, voice hollow. Ever. And then I walked out. I blocked him. Everywhere. And for a while it was quiet. Until my phone started buzzing. Not from him but from mutual friends. He wasn't handling this well. Apparently, now that I was actually gone, he was desperate to talk. But instead of messaging me directly, he was using them. Sending voice notes, texts, anything, like some pathetic game of emotional telephone. Some of my friends ignored him. Some entertained it, thinking I'd want to know. I didn't. But then one of our mutual guy friends dropped the real bombshell. He's been listening to some weird podcasts lately. The whole masculinity thing. I think that's where this all started. I felt a sharp jolt in my stomach. So that was it. That's where this sudden shift in behavior had come from. That's why, out of nowhere, he started acting like I owed him my labor, like he was entitled to me sacrificing my career, my time, my energy. Because some basement-dwelling, fake guru on the internet told him that a proper woman should do everything for him while he sat on his ass and enjoyed the rewards. The realization made me feel sick. This wasn't even about me. It never had been. He didn't want me. He wanted any woman who would fit the mold of the fantasy they sold him. And when I didn't, he tried to break me down, mold me into it, push me into submission little by little. I felt violated, angry, used. He had loved those podcasts' ideas more than he had ever loved me. And now, after spending months shoving me into the dirt to lift himself up, he had the audacity to want my sympathy because he couldn't afford the rent without my contribution? I could picture him now, sitting in that apartment, staring at the bills piling up, realizing that for the first time in his life, there was no woman picking up the slack for him. And he still probably thought I was the gold digger. Not him. Not the guy who expected free labor, free meals, free comfort, and free sacrifice. No, in his mind, I was the problem. I could feel the anger bubbling in my chest, hotter, sharper than before. Not just at him, but at the entire system that lets men like him believe they are owed something just for existing. I let it go on for 2 months. 2 months of red flags stacking up, of doing the extra work, of trying to be patient, of giving him a chance to course correct. Never again. I was in my 30s. I was done babysitting grown men who expected free labor just because society told them they deserved it. Never again. I was done. Done analyzing, done explaining, done feeling like I needed to justify my decision to anyone. But somehow my brain wouldn't shut up. The more I thought about it, the more I felt like I had missed something. Some deeper layer to his sudden transformation into the kind of man who thought a proper woman should clean up after him for free. And then the letter came. A plain white envelope, wedged in my mailbox. I almost didn't open it right away, assuming it was just a random bill or junk mail. But the moment I saw the sender's name, our landlord, something twisted in my gut. Why the hell would the landlord be contacting me? The lease was in his name. I tore it open, and as my eyes scanned the words, my breath hitched. Outstanding balance. Balance. Unpaid rent. I blinked, rereading the numbers, my pulse spiking as the reality settled in. That cheap, manipulative bastard hadn't even been paying his full share of rent. My hands started shaking as I flipped through the breakdown. I had been covering more than I thought. He had been quietly shifting the burden onto me, bit by bit, while sitting there, telling me I was a gold digger. I felt my stomach churn, part rage, part humiliation. How long had he been doing this? I sat down, my mind racing, and pulled up my banking app. I had never really double-checked our payments before because why would I? We had a system. We had a spreadsheet. He was the one who made the goddamn spreadsheet. And yet, as I compared transactions, I saw it. The pattern. He had never adjusted his portion properly after the raise. The difference. I had been making up for it. Month after month. That little €80 increase in his rent contribution should have been more. A lot more. Meanwhile, he had an extra €400 a month in disposable income. Money he was keeping for himself while I unknowingly subsidized his lifestyle. I could barely breathe, because I knew where that money had gone. I had already seen the charges on his account. The podcast subscriptions. The monthly payments to some bullshit masculinity club. I had been paying his way while he paid to be brainwashed into thinking I was beneath him. My vision blurred, heat crawling up my neck, a buzzing filling my ears. He made me feel like I was the problem. He made me question myself, question my standards, question whether I was expecting too much. And the whole time, I was literally paying to be manipulated. I thought back to every conversation we had about money. The spreadsheet. His fair system that he controlled. The little comments. "Oh, I'll send you my share later. Oh, I must have calculated that wrong." The sudden reluctance to discuss finances. How he would get weirdly defensive if I asked about rent, as if I was accusing him of something. The smugness. The slow transition from being my equal to acting like he was above me, like his time mattered more, like he was my goddamn superior. Had this been his plan from the start? Had he always intended to slowly push me into dependency while building his own safety net behind my back? Because it was too perfect. Too calculated. He gets a raise. I start paying more rent without realizing it. He gets a raise. I start doing all the chores. He gets a raise. I start losing my independence. All while he's learning from these podcasts, from these groups, from these pathetic online spaces where insecure men teach each other how to break a woman down. I felt violated. Not physically, but in a way that made my skin crawl. In a way that made me want to scrub myself raw just to get rid of the lingering feeling of being used. I thought about all the fights I let go. All the times I picked up his slack, thinking he's just stressed, he'll come around. He was never going to come around, because he had designed it this way. And now, he was begging for my sympathy through mutual friends because he couldn't afford the rent without me. I actually laughed when I thought about it. Laughed. A sharp, ugly sound that tasted like bitterness in my mouth. Oh, the irony. He had called me a gold digger, but in the end, who was the one screwed without the other's money? Who was the one who couldn't sustain himself without tricking someone else into paying his way? It wasn't me. I knew some people would wonder why I didn't notice sooner. So I thought about all the things I'd explained to them. He built the system himself. The spreadsheet, the rules, the budgeting, he controlled it all. I just trusted him. I wasn't keeping score at first. We had natural preferences for chores. He liked vacuuming, I liked dishes. But I noticed when the balance shifted. When it became assumed that I'd pick up the slack. We had talked about the future. We had agreed on what our relationship should be. That wasn't just in my head. He knew what I expected, and he still planned against me. The podcasts, he listened in secret. That's what haunted me the most. We had always shared things we found interesting, stupid memes, dumb videos, movies. But this? He hid it. He knew it was wrong. I clenched the letter in my hand, my nails digging into the paper. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. I wasn't the problem. I was just the target. And I had escaped before he could finish the job. When I walked away, I thought that was it. I thought I had burned the bridge, cut the cord, erased him from my life. But parasites don't just disappear when you stop feeding them. They cling, they beg, they rot. First, there was silence. I moved into my new place, settled into a life without the suffocating weight of his mess, his manipulation, his entitled expectations. My apartment stayed clean without effort. The air felt lighter. The food in the fridge was always mine. But then, the messages started. Not from him, he was still blocked, but through mutual friends. Little whispers, desperate breadcrumbs trying to pull me back in. He says you overreacted. He doesn't know why you're making a big deal out of this. He thinks you should at least talk to him. First, I ignored it. I was done. There was nothing left to say. But the messages kept coming. The tone shifted. He needs help with rent. He can't afford the apartment without you. He says it's only fair you contribute. Fair. That word made my skin crawl. He had spent months quietly draining me, making me pay more rent than I realized, letting me pick up the slack in every possible way. And now, without me, he was sinking. The weight I had been carrying for him was finally crushing him instead. I almost felt bad. Almost. Instead, I let it happen. I let him struggle. I had been expecting his desperation, his attempts to pull me back into his orbit. But I wasn't expecting the public performance. One day, a friend sent me a screenshot. He had posted a long, self-pitying rant online, dripping with misery and self-righteous indignation. In his version of the story, I had betrayed him. I had abandoned a good man who just wanted a traditional relationship. I had thrown away love for money. My stomach twisted, but not with regret. with rage, because there it was laid out for everyone to see, the final desperate lie. He had called me a gold digger, but now that I was gone, he was the one who couldn't afford his own life. I braced myself for sympathy in the comments, for people taking his side, consoling him, feeding his ego. But what I saw instead, people calling him out, his own friends tearing into him. Someone even mentioned the unpaid rent. Someone else called him out for expecting a partner to work full-time and clean up after him. The longer I scrolled, the clearer it became. No one was buying his act. He had played himself into a corner, and now he was sitting in the wreckage of his own making. For a moment, I imagined him in that apartment, alone, drowning in bills, watching his carefully crafted story fall apart. I had spent so long thinking he was smarter than he was, that he was pulling some intricate, calculated manipulation. But really, he was just another man who thought he could break a woman down, then cried when she left. I never responded. I never acknowledged the messages, the apologies that came later, the weak attempts at reconciliation. I let him fade into irrelevance. One day, I heard through someone else that he had moved back in with his parents. That was the final thread, the last piece of closure I didn't even know I needed. I had spent 2 years lifting him up, supporting him, making sure his life was running smoothly while he quietly chipped away at mine. Now I was thriving. I had rebuilt. And him? He was right back where he started. Maybe now someone else could wash his dishes. But it would never be me.